What's up, everybody, man? Back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're doing something a little different. Today, I want to review the Bandai Monster King Series Godzilla 2017, aka Godzilla Earth. Probably. So I was at the comic shop with the boys the other day for my last figure haul of 2024, and I came across a series of giant Godzilla figures. There was a giant Godzilla Earth, a giant Godzilla Ultima, that's what they call him, and then a giant Shin Godzilla, and they were all Bandai looking Godzillas, but I had a sneaking suspicion, and I still have a sneaking suspicion. Is this a bootleg? Like, how do you know? I can't really wrap my head around the fact that this would be anything but a bootleg, as I could kind of explain here. But I'm not sure. Like, what do you guys think? Look at this thing and then tell me if you think it's a bootleg, and I'll kind of give you some reasons why I think it is. Either way, I figured I'd review it for funsies, but this is going to be my review of a probably bootleg Godzilla Earth from Bandai Monster King Series. The reason I grabbed this one, there's actually a few. I was really debating this between the Ultima, the Shin Godzilla, because I really love both of those other designs as well, and I love those versions of the character. But I don't really own, like, anything Godzilla anime. Ironically, even though I'm, like, the only person out here who likes and still hypes the Godzilla anime series, I don't really own much from it at all, as you'll see in the figure comparison section. I also really don't own much Singular Point stuff, so it was really a big debate, but I kind of figured, like, you know, Godzilla Earth is the biggest Godzilla, so I might as well grab the big Godzilla Earth. But what really sold me on it is that I googled the Godzilla Bandai Monster King Series Godzilla Earth, and they were like, all of them. All the ones I can find online are running for over $100, or really anywhere from like the high 90s through like $999 I saw one selling for on eBay. Who is buying it for that price? These guys at the comic shop, and there was a couple of them, as there was a couple of like the Shin Godzillas and Ultimas, was only 40 bucks, which I feel like that's fine to admit that I spent 40 bucks on this. Even if it is a bootleg, I think the quality is actually pretty solid on this thing from what I can tell. It's a very decent replication of the original. And even if it is a bootleg, it's still a pretty faithful Godzilla Earth representation for my shelf. Actually, you can't see it, but it sits up above frame now. But I think this guy's cool. I wanted to grab him and review him and check him out. Quickly, the reason I think that it's a bootleg is, first of all, the tail position. It's too arced. Like, I'm seeing it's too curved. And in the photos I see here of the Bandai Monster King Series Godzilla Earth, I don't know if the tail is as arced as these were. Like, all of these have a really, really big curve to them, and I don't know if all of the actual Monster King Series ones did. The trademarks on the bottom are also a little shallow and kind of muddy to me. Like, I feel like they got smudged and messed up. The spines on his back curve in like towards the middle spine, and it was consistent across all of these big ones. They all curved inward. The chest also, as you can see, looks lopsided, like it's been squished kind of right here on this part of the belly. Looks like it's been squished inward. And the paint is really the dead giveaway, as I can't see any evidence online of any of the Bandai Monster King Series Godzillas having paint that looks like this, where it's like really bright right on these joints. It just isn't accurate to the paint job from the movies. It isn't accurate to any of the other toys I've seen online, and I feel like that's a dead giveaway that this is a bootleg. But it's a pretty high quality bootleg, and I cannot find a Godzilla Monster King Series for cheap, so I feel like this one was one of the ones where it was like, I kind of felt like it was not the worst thing on earth to grab. As for the sculpt, like I said, mine does have an issue where he seems to be warped in right around here on his stomach, which does result in his legs also being just a little lopsided. Other than that, and then other than the dorsal spines curving inward, which I don't think is going to be solved with a blow dryer heating it up. I just think that's a matter of the plastic itself is kind of warped in there because it was not the highest quality of toys. I'll give the blow dryer a shot after I record, I suppose, but I don't know if it'll help. Other than that, the sculpt is very solid. He's very recognizably Godzilla Earth, and in fact, he looks just like Godzilla Fillius. The big difference between Godzilla Earth and Godzilla Fillius is the face, and this one has the Filius face, which is a lot less sharp. It's a lot more, I would use the term messy around the eyes. I feel like the Godzilla Earth design is a lot sharper of a design. And then the big giveaway, obviously, is the chin beard. Godzilla Earth has the chin beard, whereas Godzilla Fillius does not. However, this is still a Godzilla Earth figure, as this is a replication of the 2017 line, which of course was hiding the fact that there was two Godzillas in Monster Planet, which meant that this Godzilla was based on the one that appears during the flashback sequence at the start of the movie. This is the Godzilla that attacks the airport. This is the Godzilla that is also seen in the opening montage, and it's also just the same design as Godzilla Fillius. Now, I actually think they've done a really good job with the sculpt on this thing, as I'm sure the real Bandai one is actually a little crisper. I see some pictures here of what I think is the real Monster King series on eBay. These pictures are from Kaiju Zipangu, and you can see I do think it's a little sharper than my figure, so I do think, again, more evidence to say that this is a bootleg. But overall, the proportions are pretty solid. It looks a lot like Godzilla Earth. It's got a very good shape to it. The spines look just like Earth's spines. They look just like leaves, which I think is really cool. I think it's a really cool feature of Godzilla Earth. He's got really bulky shoulders, those very well-defined muscles and veins and roots moving through the arms and into the hands. His hands are well sculpted, with the fingers being separated from each other and fingernails. The chest itself looks pretty much like Godzilla Earth's chest, very bulky, sectioned into. It's got not only the big upper pec section, but it's also got the abs moving down into the underbelly, which is pretty cool as well, showing how muscular this Godzilla is. He's got really nice folds under the arms where the veins and roots stretch through. I loved that Godzilla Earth was like a mix between plant and animal, like the roots and veins and muscle, it's all one with him. It looks really cool. Going through the legs, he's got really strong muscles in the legs and into the very strong calves. I feel like Godzilla's legs were a little small for how big he was. They probably should have been a little bulkier, but either way, looking fine. The feet could be a little better. The feet look fine, but the toes are kind of crunched into each other. I think they could use a little more separation. The tail itself has really good textures moving up through it, and again, the spines on the tail look pretty solid as well. The face itself is a little smooth and could use more depth to it, but I feel like, again, that is kind of going with the Godzilla Fillius of it all. Godzilla Fillius, I do think, could have used more texture and depth on his face as well, whereas I think Godzilla Earth's design actually has decent depth with the face. One thing that I really love about this sculpt and the design itself is these like really strong jugulars running down Godzilla's neck, where you can see muscle and veins stretching up into the head, through the body, into the neck, and just that really harsh contrast and shape cut out by those jugulars I think looks sick. It is a lot like the 2014 Godzilla. I'm fine with that personally. As for the paint job, kind of a hard one to do. I feel for the toy makers on this one because Godzilla Earth is such a basic design. He's just kind of this bluish green across the entire body, a sort of very dull turquoise, and then it's just the way that the light reflects off of him that sometimes he's got some brighter spots, sometimes he's got some darker spots. The spines themselves are a brighter color. On all the figures they're represented as a more glossy color, but the spines themselves are kind of a brighter turquoise, and that's really all there is going on with Earth. And this toy represents that pretty well. Now, as far as my paint job goes, I like the color of the spines. I think it's pretty cool. I like how glossy it is. I also like how it's a little multicolored, so it kind of goes from being darker to lighter as you go up. Across the whole of Godzilla's body, he is a dark turquoise-ish, greenish color, which I think actually is a very close color match to Godzilla Earth, and then he does reflect on the light very well. He's not an overly glossy figure, which looks cool. He has these really hideous, ugly, bright patches on his legs and on his shoulders, and I do think that's a product of this being a bootleg. It is really ugly. I don't think they're really there on the real Monster King series, or at least I think if they are, they're very subtle. I don't think that they should be exactly taken away, as I do think that there is something kind of like this going on the real Monster King series. I just think the color is a lot more subtle and a lot more of a close color match to the Godzilla body overall, so it's less of this ugly contrast. The eyes are a dark blue, which look pretty decent, but there's no pupils painted in there. The fingernails are kind of a metallic purplish color, as are the toenails, which I think looks pretty cool, and they are different than the spines, which is actually pretty cool. As for articulation, you've got a decent range for a Godzilla toy this big, especially one of these like Bandai ones, where they don't really typically have all that much. You've got two joints for the tail, so you've got one separation right here that can spin all the way around, one separation at the base of the tail that can spin all the way around. The legs can kick out. You actually, I think, can get them to rotate all the way around, just like this, but it does take a little bit of effort because, of course, they're not really meant to, but the legs can spin around and then the arms can spin all the way around. Just due to the nature, I think, of Godzilla's enormous, bulky neck and the way his head is built, that's where the articulation ends, which brings us to a grand total of 6 points of articulation, which is pretty close to standard for these things. They're actually typically between 4 to 6. As for our figure comparisons here, this figure, in terms of its paint job, reminds me a lot of this mini Godzilla Earth that I have, which I'm pretty sure was a gift from Godzilla 154 at G-Fest 2019. And much like the big one, the reason it reminds me so much of it is the paint job, where it's got those incredibly bright contrasted parts on the shoulders and the legs, just like the new one that I got. This one actually is an official Bandai product. As you can see, it's a tiny little fella, especially compared to this. This is like the difference between Godzilla Fillius and Godzilla Earth right here. This tiny little guy is a Godzilla Earth mini 3-inch Bandai figure I got way back in 2018. And you can see he is just dwarfed by it, but it does have a very subtle sort of lighter green on the shoulders and the legs here. And I think that's what you're seeing poorly adapted onto this, I'm assuming, bootlegged figure. There's the difference. The mini one's sculpt is mostly identical, except he's a little less lopsided on the one side where it doesn't look like it's sunken in as much. But there actually is still a little imperfection in there where it's not perfectly symmetrical, which is pretty cool actually. Unfortunately, and I would love to change this, the only other Goji I have is this, which is the Godzilla Fillius / Godzilla Earth flashback version from SH Monster Arts. It's a much smaller figure than this one, but it's actually a pretty bulky, pretty large SH Monster Arts figure. There they are standing off against each other. Big, huge, enormous difference in terms of the quality. I think that this is one of Monster Arts' sturdiest and kind of one of their better works. I think the sculpt is really solid on this thing, although I do think that they made big improvements to the Godzilla Earth figure, which I never was able to get, but there they are next to each other. Looking pretty cool. While I don't have any Bandai Monster King Series Godzilla figures, I do have this Bandai Creations Godzilla 2004 to stand off against. He actually is a little taller. This Bandai Godzilla Monster King Series Earth bootleg thing I got stands at about 9 inches. This guy stands close to 12 inches tall, so he is a little taller of a figure. You can see them squaring up against each other. Oh man, Godzilla 2004 would just wipe the floor with Earth at this scale. Just... It's a shame Earth has that invincibility cheat with his stupid impermeable shield that only a multi-dimensional being could chip through. But there they are standing off against each other. Pretty cool fight right here. Ugh. The end of the Millennium series meets the beginning of the anime series. And here is the Jakks Pacific Godzilla 2019, standing a little taller than the Godzilla Earth. You can see that the Godzilla Earth design took a lot of inspiration from the Monsterverse design. Here's the two of them standing against each other. Pretty solid. This bootleg guy, a little bit better of a sculpt than the Jakks Pacific one, but the Jakks Pacific one, I think the paint job and the way it all comes together overall, it still makes it the more quality of the two figures, I would actually argue. So overall, how are we feeling? Well, I actually think that this is a very solid toy, even if it is a bootleg. The sculpt is pretty solid with a lot of good detailing and a lot of good details from the movie brought into the figure. I actually think it's a very well adapted toy. The paint job itself is really lacking, especially in terms of these bright, ugly areas, but I do think that's a result of this being a bootleg. Not that I won't hold that against the figure, I definitely will. And then articulation for a figure this big, I'm very happy with how much articulation it has. Typically they only have 4 joints, so I'm happy to see that it has 2 more points than I would expect. For a bootleg, I'm gonna give this thing like a 10 out of 10. It doesn't look ridiculous. It doesn't look like a cheap knockoff. It does feel quality, which is why very well could be real. But that muddy trademark down there on the foot, I think is the dead giveaway. Ultimately, if this is a real Bandai Monster King Series Godzilla Earth, its paint job doesn't hold up as well as some of the ones I've seen online, and it does have that really lopsided chest piece, which I am gonna hold against the figure. He doesn't stand perfect because of it, and so on a non-bootleg scale, I'm not gonna give this a 10 out of 10. I will be knocking it down to a 7 out of 10. I think that there could be some improvements, some more depth in the face, and then fix the issues on it, like the spines, the chunk out of his chest, and that ugly paint, and then you're looking golden, and I'll give it a 10 out of 10 again, probably. Do you have the Bandai Monster King Series Godzilla Earth from 2017? Or what Godzilla anime figures do you have in general? Do you have any bootlegs like this? And if so, what is the quality of yours? Do yours hold up as well as mine? Because I actually think this thing's pretty dang good. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment down below and let me know. As always, I would love to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to make videos like this for you in the first place and review figures like this for you. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man, out.